What have I just bought? What have I just spent my money on? Hello one and all, welcome to Seen Through Glass. Welcome back to Alexander's Prestige. Hopefully you saw my last video from here when I teased the fact the guys had invited me up to check out a rather special car. Well, that car is right behind me. Yes, a Porsche 911. Now I realise some of you might be going, oh god, bore off, not another Porsche and not one that looks as bland as that old thing. Well, that is one of the rarest modern day Porsches made. There were only 250 of them in the world and it's worth around £300,000. Let me explain. So welcome to the 911 Sport Classic, an exceptionally rare variant of the 997.2 911. As I say, nearly 10 years old. No, actually 10 years old now, this car. My maths was all over the place. Fundamentally, a collector's item. I'm going to get into the mechanics of this car in a little bit, but let's go through firstly the visuals, because it was kind of created to celebrate, I guess, old 70s 911s, a bit of a throwback to the golden era of things like 2.7 RSs, hence that big old ducktail. But because of its rarity and because of the sort of lengths that Porsche went to create it, it's become insanely collectible. Heck, it was collectible back in the day. When this thing came out, it was more expensive than the equivalent or the generational turbo, the GT3 RS. This thing was priced for big money clients. So yes, as I say, let me walk you around, show you around what Porsche did to make this thing theoretically so special. Lots to tell you about this car, so bear with me. First thing I'll say is that all Sport Classics should look the same. They were all offered in this Sport Classic grey paint, not a very inventive name, but it's kind of similar to modern day crayon. It's a bit flat, a bit subdued, but I actually think it suits the car quite well. In addition to the ducktail, which is one of the main standout features, the sort of other biggest way to tell if you're looking at a Sport Classic are the wheels, because these are Fuchs style wheels. And as I mentioned, this whole car is all about harking back to the 1970 glory days of the 911, and you'll see that as we work our way around. But these wheels weren't really seen since the 70s, and they were brought back for this car, and I think they look amazing. I wish Porsche would offer Fuchs style wheels on their modern cars, because just how good does that look, especially the kind of deep dish offset rear wheel compared to the front. I actually tried to find these for my 911 Carrera T, given the kind of retro rally look of my car last year. I thought they'd be a perfect finishing touch, but you just cannot find them on the aftermarket, and even if you did, they are extortionately expensive. So yes, so I feel like some people buy this car just to have those wheels, so we could say the wheels are worth 300 grand, but that would be a stretch. Anyway, those are the three main standout features: the colour, the ducktail and the wheels, but so much more to look at. Make our way around the front. This car did get a slightly sort of bespoke front splitter, front lip, whilst it had the standard sport front bumper for the 997 generation. You can just see here these kind of nostrils denoting that different front lip. Actually, there is a 997, a standard 997 just behind. You can see maybe the difference there. In addition to the paint, you also got these stripes that ran from the bonnet, or the front of the bonnet, all the way up over the car and actually over the ducktail at the back. That's a little bit reminiscent, I think, of the modern day Turbo S exclusive series. But before you think, oh, so that's it, it's just a 2010 Turbo S exclusive. No, it's not, because they made 500 units, I think, of the Turbo S exclusive, well, it's the coupe. Well, this obviously, as I said, 250. Also, mechanically, very, very different, the two cars, but we'll come back to that as I keep teasing. So yes, a thing that often gets missed with this car is actually the roof. Now, it's really hard to pick up on camera, but it's kind of like a bobble roof. Can you see the kind of indents either side? Now, that's a little bit similar to the modern GT3 RS, but at the time it really hadn't been seen except on the Carrera GT, so that is a pretty damn cool thing to denote. But yeah, it's really not coming up on camera at all, and actually to the naked eye it's hard to notice as well. But just small little details like this that just make this car's overall package pretty outstanding. Going to keep making my way along the car now. You do have a Porsche exclusive badge just there behind the front wheels. A little bit worn away now because this car is 10 years old, as I mentioned. Obviously sports side sills, those huge rear Fuchs style wheels, and then yes, that ducktail spoiler. I love this thing. Again, like the wheels, I wish Porsche would offer a ducktail on their cars. It just looks so perfect, I think. Even though the cars have got bigger and fatter, it still somehow works, and to me denotes kind of sport touring. GT3 touring needs a ducktail. I have seen, I think, maybe a few other 997s that have tried to do it through an aftermarket workshop, but yeah, very, very cool, especially with that old 911 Sport Classic badge. As you can see, the stripes running around right down to that badge. Come to exhaust, obviously they look a little bit more classic, but they did actually tune the exhaust to have a 1970s-esque sound, apparently a bit more hollow, a bit more boomy, especially in the mid-range, to kind of, once again, hark back to the 1970s. I feel like I've said that about 300 times. Anyway, I think I've covered off the majority of the exterior changes. Let's open up the door and look at the inside, because the magic continues. First thing you may notice is it's very, very brown. Porsche basically covered all the plastic elements and really anything else in brown chocolate leather. It's a strong look, it's a bold look. Somehow it works for me. Also because you have this kind of like stitched Pepita style door inserts and seat inserts, very vintage, very, very cool. And that continues for the rear seats, because yes, this is still a standard 911 in that sense. No lightweightness, no rear seat delete. We also have stripes continuing on those main dials there. Manual car, manual gearbox, so 3 pedals and that manual shifter in the middle. And if I move around, let me just close this door, come around to the other side, you'll see it also has a badge denoting its number in the 250 units. So this car right here is number 129 out of 250, just casually put there on a badge to the left. But what a cool place, I think, to sit. And I have to say, I'm so pleased Porsche made the effort with the interior as much as they did with the exterior, because sometimes you walk up to a car and it looks amazing, and then you get in and you kind of lose a sense of how special it is. But this car, I feel like, is as special to sit in as it is to look at. Something quite cool about this particular car is one of its previous owners, Harry Styles. Yes, ex-One Direction pop sensation Harry Styles. Actually a big fan of his latest album, but let's not get distracted. That's not why this thing is worth nearly 300 grand. I would say that based purely on visuals and aesthetics, I would understand why it's sort of valuable. Maybe not 300 grand valuable, but you know, anyway. There is an issue I have with this car, or a problem as to that holds me back from understanding why it costs quite so much. And that is that theoretically, fundamentally, this car isn't that mechanically special. All the work they've done to the outside, they didn't do that much apart from tick a few options for this car. It is at base a 997.2 Carrera S, as I say, with a few optional extras. Nothing that kind of makes it stand out from the rest of the 911 lineup at the time. It's not like a GT3 RS 4 litre or a GT3 Touring or a 911R. There's not sort of bespoke trickery everywhere. It's just a Carrera S with a few ticks. Anyway, quite unbelievably, the guys at Alexander's Prestige have said that I can drive it for a very, very short amount of time, because there were 4,000 miles on the clock, and I've already told you how rare this thing is. So this is truly, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, not something which I imagine will ever happen again. But anyway, right, I've never actually driven a 997.2, so sport mode, I think, essential. Manual gearbox, and off we go. Ooh. I'm kind of intrigued and excited because, yes, as I say, it shouldn't be that kind of crazy, this car. It is a naturally aspirated flat 6. The car did get the optional sport chassis pack, which kind of lowers the ride height. You get a limited slip differential and just makes everything a little bit more aggressive. It also had the optional power pack, which put horsepower up about 22 horsepower to just over 400 horsepower, which in 2010 was quick. And I have to say, it still gets up and goes. I'm really watching the rev counter because I don't want to take the piss with this opportunity, but here we go, it's a straight line. Let's just, we're going to shift early, but yeah, it feels quick. It feels quick. I tell you what, despite the fact it's got the Sportster chassis, it's so road compliant, much more so than my own car. It feels really nice on the road. Now, Porsche did apparently do a lot of work on the exhaust to make it kind of sound a little bit more like a 70s 911. One thing I have to say is it revs so freely, so much quicker again than my own car. Like, oh my god, I was so ready to be like, oh, it's a bit boring to drive, but god, it's just still a very good 911. But yeah, they did some work on the exhaust to try and make it sound like an old 70s car, because fundamentally a lot of elements of the Sport Classic are pointed towards a 2.7 RS from the 70s. These days, with exhausts being so sort of shouty and crackly, it actually sounds quite muted. Maybe from the outside it sounds better, but in here you get a lot of road noise, I'd have to say. Because I've had limited experience in these types of cars, i.e. the 997, I can't tell you, you know, how it sort of ranks and compares, but it is definitely nicer than I was thinking. It's just whether it's special enough to be 300 grand. You know, Porsche try not to make collector's cars. With all the hype that came around with the 911R, they just went, well, here, have a GT3 Touring, because they don't like people overinflating their cars' values. But this thing, it seems to be the complete opposite of that. Whilst I have to say I'm still really enjoying it, a very short, limited drive, but yeah, I mean, it's still great. But it's not maybe special. And that's why the price tag, I just feel, is a little bit out there. I'd have a 911R every day of the week and just get a body shop to put on a ducktail for me. I think I need to drive more 997s though. God, this is exciting. Anyway, it is more about style and ambiance, this car. It's about the experience, what you're sitting in, and you are constantly reminded of it. It's not like, oh, I have to look down and go, oh wow, the seats are cool. It's everywhere. As I showed you, the dials, the colour, the leather, I mean, everything about it makes you go, oh, this is something different. But yeah. Well, no, I'm not going to say the driving was bad. The driving was really good. The driving was really good. But maybe at the time, if you'd owned a Carrera S and then you went and spent whatever ludicrous money Porsche were asking, you would have been a bit like, what have I just bought? What have I just spent my money on? Anyway, back at Alexander's Prestige. 3 miles on the clock I put there. 3 miles. I think that, I'll take it. I think that was decent. So what did I learn from that experience? Well, the 997's a good car, isn't it? I feel like I really need to have a go in a few more 997.2s, and maybe at the time this car didn't feel that different to a standard Carrera S, hence why a lot of journalists and media were a bit like, I don't really get it. But sitting here now, 10 years down the line, it does feel pretty cool, pretty unique, pretty bespoke. 300 grand? Hey, that's the market value. That's what people are paying for it. And I think there will always be these kind of cars, whether it's Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, these special editions which command such a high price point. A shame for me, but I feel like maybe, as I mentioned on the drive, I could go and find a 997.2, get a workshop to make a ducktail, and have something a little bit similar. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Give it a thumbs up if you have, and make sure you stay subscribed for plenty more videos to come.